Two most modern tanks in North Korean arsenal are Chonma-Ho 216 and Songun-Ho. These tanks are kinda similar, but they do have differences. We will take a look at both of them and see if those tanks are on par with their modern counterparts. But before we start, a word from my sponsor. This video is sponsored by War Thunder. War Thunder is a military vehicle combat online game. It is free to play on PC, PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. Not to mention that it is cross-platform between PC and consoles. The game features an incredible arsenal of more than 1500 historically accurate playable tanks, aircraft, helicopters and ships from 1930s to 1990s. Best thing about the game are its realistic physics and one of the most detailed and most immersive vehicle damage models in gaming. If you use my link to register, you will receive a bonus, a premium vehicle, tank, aircraft or ship, as well as 3-day account boost. The game is completely free, so you can start playing immediately. First, we will take a look at Chonma-Ho 216. The tank is armed with a 125mm gun. It can fire APFSDS projectiles, as well as possibly heat and high explosive fragmentation. The tank most definitely does not have a gun-launched ATGM, like modern Russian tanks, but North Koreans have done something really unusual. The tank has two anti-tank guided missile launchers mounted on the turret, as well as two anti-air launchers similar to Soviet Igla. This is a very unusual approach, since most modern tanks don't have any anti-air launchers, and those that can fire anti-tank guided missiles do so from the main gun. This approach is more similar to modern infantry fighting vehicles. The weapons are said to be fired from the inside of the tank, which makes sense since their sights are far away from where they could be aimed with and fired. ATGM launcher is said to be Bullseye 3. Some sources say how it's a copy of Russian Kornet ATGM, but that is highly unlikely. I mean, it could have been based on it, but the launchers are much smaller, so it can't have the same performance because the missiles are smaller. The information about the penetration of North Korean APFSDS projectiles is that they can penetrate around 600mm of steel, probably at 2 km. This isn't great, but it's not bad either. Most of the countries that don't have massive budget have projectiles with similar performances, especially the ones whose tanks are armed with 125mm guns. Now, I have found contradicting sources about this tank regarding the presence of the autoloader, but evidence seems to go more in favor of manual loader. The tank's commander position is the same like it was on T-62, and it's not strange since the Chonma-Ho family have basically been upgrades of T-62 tanks, Chonma-Ho 216 being the latest one. This is evident by the fact that the commander's sight is in the same position like it used to be. The main gun sight is on the same side of the turret, which would suggest that the commander sits behind the gunner. In various pictures of the tank, you can see that there is a crew member sitting on the right side of the turret. I mean, this could have been done just for the parade so all the crew could breathe the fresh air while going around the streets, but the problem is that all previous Chonma-Ho variants had a heavy machine gun mounted on the right side of the turret, just like the T-55 and T-62 tanks. This heavy machine gun is supposed to be used manually by the loader. Another thing is that the Songun-Ho is confirmed to have a manual loader. Not to mention that Chonma-Ho without the upgrade with the launchers on the turret has a periscope on the loader's side. This periscope appears to have been moved to the hatch on the upgraded variant. This wouldn't even need to be present if the tank has an automatic loader. So it is most likely that Chonma-Ho, just like Songun-Ho, has additional crew member as a loader. Now we come to the fire control system, which appears to be one of the worst parts of the tank. The tank does not have a thermal sight, something that Western tanks started using since early 80s and Soviet since early 90s. There is a lot of evidence to back that up. First and most obvious one is the presence of the infrared searchlight next to the main gun. This has always been on tanks with basic night vision sights, and in this case it appears to be very similar to the one of T-62, which means it's not even that good. Another evidence is that the night vision sight TPN-1, which was present on T-62, is still present on Chonma-Ho 216. And since the sight appears to be pretty much the same as the one on T-62, that means it is pretty old. When using the infrared searchlight, the sight has a maximum range of 800 meters for spotting tank-sized targets. But when using the searchlight, you would be giving yourself away. Therefore, without the searchlight, you would have only around 400 meters of view range at best. In comparison, modern thermal imagers can detect tank-sized targets up to 10 kilometers away, and most common second-generation ones would be able to spot a tank at around 3.5 kilometers. That is far more than infrared sight of Chonma-Ho. Now, you were probably wondering, why don't other modern tanks have anti-air launchers mounted on them? The answer is pretty simple: they don't need them. Modern tanks have something called automatic lead, which isn't really modern since it's a system from the 70s. Most modern ones have automatic target tracking. But anyway, what automatic lead does is that once you laze a target, the fire control system automatically tracks it as long as you keep the sight on the target. Therefore, various types of ammo can be used to target helicopters. US, for example, developed a proximity fuse ammo. Soviets and today Russians can use anti-tank guided missiles to shoot at the helicopters. And since North Korean tanks lack automatic lead, they can't shoot at helicopters with confident accuracy. You might be wondering, how do I know they don't have automatic lead? Well, the answer is pretty simple. The main gun sight is still the same as one of T-62. Even if it has been upgraded, it can't have automatic lead. The way automatic lead works is that once the target is lased, the sight would turn towards the target, while the gun would turn slightly to compensate for the target's movement. This would require room for the sight to rotate around, and Chonma-Ho simply does not have room for the main gun sight to move around. Of course, the tank has other modern features such as laser rangefinder, ballistic computer, and a meteorological sensor, but the lack of thermal imaging system and automatic lead puts the tank fire control system very far behind modern standards. Now, the commander station has been upgraded on the latest variant, and no longer features an infrared searchlight. There are two protective boxes where the commander's sight used to be. One appears to be the sight for the ATGM launcher, and the other could be the upgraded sight for the commander. But it is possible that the commander's sight is also used for the launcher, and the other box could be the commander's own laser rangefinder. But we can't know for certain because no information about the sight is available. There are chances that the commander received a thermal sight, but judging by the size of the armored boxes, it's not very likely. But still possible. It could have also been upgraded with third-generation infrared sight, which does not require a searchlight for good performance. One important thing to note though is that all the mass on the turret's roof can be problematic for the commander's observation, the biggest problem being the twin HMGs mounted above the gun. The protection of the tank doesn't seem to be the best either. The armor, of course, has been heavily modified over the years, and the turret armor appears to be somewhat decent. But the problem is that we don't have any information of the composition or any armor estimates. Now, the problem with the protection is that the hull has very flimsy upgrades, and the turret design isn't the greatest. The hull has some additional protection mounted over what appears to be the base armor of T-62, which is a simple 100mm plate. The armor upgrade resembles the T-62M from the early 80s, and given that it's not very thick, the chances of it being bad are pretty high. The top part of the hull has some ERA, but appears to have little to no other upgrades under it. The turret's side protection seems to be lacking as well. It appears to be a simple steel plate, but unlike Soviet-style turrets, which have very steep angles of side armor, which makes it very hard to hit, this is almost completely straight, which means that you can easily hit it there if you were to shoot it from the 30-degree angle. The side of the hull appears to have some additional protection, which is either ERA or additional steel panels. Either of the two is pretty normal for modern tanks. But the tank does appear to be equipped with laser warning receivers, which is a pretty neat feature since it warns the crew when the tank is being painted by a laser, either from a laser rangefinder or a laser guided missile. As far as mobility goes, the tank is pretty light, weighs only 39 tons, but it is powered by a weak 750 horsepower engine, so even the mobility isn't really satisfactory. Now, what about Songun-Ho? Well, the firepower is pretty much the same as the one of Chonma-Ho. It has anti-air and ATGM launchers mounted on the turret as well, and as I said before, it is confirmed to have a manual loader and ammunition is placed in the rear of the turret. The fire control system is just as bad as the one of Chonma-Ho. It has infrared searchlight, which means there is no thermal sight, and the main gun sight is the same, which means it has no automatic lead either. The protection though appears to be better. The turret design is better at least. The hull protection has been increased and the turret and the hull both are equipped with explosive reactive armor. The explosive reactive armor is said to be effective even against tandem-shaped heat projectiles, but just like with Chonma, we don't have any information about armor composition or any value protection estimates. The tank is also more mobile. It weighs 44 tons but is now powered by a 1200 horsepower engine and it can reach maximum speed of 70 km per hour. This is far more comparable to modern standards than the mobility of Chonma-Ho 216. Don't forget to check out War Thunder, where you can take control of many land, air or naval vehicles. Use the link from the description to get a premium vehicle and a 3-day account boost when you register. Remember, the game is completely free for PC, PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. Just download and play. Overall, the North Korean tanks are not good. Their fire control system is decades behind the modern ones. It's especially bad that they lack any thermal imaging systems. They do have decent firepower and Songun-Ho has good mobility, but they most probably can't sustain any hit from modern projectiles. Not to mention, they wouldn't stand even a slim chance against their South Korean neighbor K2 Black Panther, which is decades ahead and currently one of the best tanks in the world. That would be all. If you like my content, you can consider supporting me on Patreon. And if not, leave a like on the video or subscribe if you are new. And I'll see you all in the next video. Have a nice day.